Dave Kluge, you know what I forgot to ask you when we were just talking is what's the right amount of time to have on your slow draft rookie draft clock? What is the correct number?
I think 4 hours is good, and I try my best. Like, if I know I unplug a lot on the weekends. I try to be here Monday through Friday as much as possible, but Saturdays I like to unplug. So I just load up the queue and set my auto pick. I mean, I know what my rankings are, and I don't care about position. So yeah, 4 hours I think is more than enough.
Right. I mean, it used to be like I was an 8-hour fan to start, but it's like it seems correct in theory, but as we've learned more, 4 hours is plenty of time. Most people, they're just clock milkers anyway, right? Like they're not like no one's that busy where you can't look in 4 hours. I don't care. What are you like doing heart surgery? Come on.
Yeah, I was a little nervous. We fired off our first redraft draft of the season about a week and a half ago, and there were a few
We're over at
clock
football
milkers
guys.
there, and I was well. This was the Beat Dave Kluge League hosted
Okay.
by League Safe, and I was terrified that this was going to end up bleeding into the NFL draft because I'm like, at that point, everybody's going to be milking the clock. Like if I'm on the clock with an 8-hour clock during round one, there's no chance I'm making my pick until the draft is over.
Right. Oh, you're saying just to try to like maximize like where is Marion Hampton going, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So
then
strategic.
a
Strategic
wide
milk.
receiver sneaks in at the end of round one. I know
Right.
my pick there.
Right. Well, and Tet McMillan would be probably he's the most volatile guy right now, right?
Mhm.
So he can go pick 5 or pick 55.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. There's
Okay.
I think it's fun, doing this stuff before the NFL draft. And so many people say that it's, counterproductive or whatever. But the way I see it, everybody's playing on the same playing field. Like it's not like one person in that league has an advantage over the other 11 people. Everybody is drafted before the NFL draft. So everybody's playing on the same canvas.
Those are cowards, okay? Like those are
Yep.
people that need and this is it's probably the same way for them in life, Dave. They need as much information, no risk, all the value gets squeezed out, right? And like, I think you and I have talked about this. I made an Ashton Genty plus 700 bet, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, sounds good.
At five.
Yeah, pick 5.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have
Yeah.
said pick 5. Where he's now what minus 250. I looked or something like that, and we'll get into what you think that actually means and for our rookie drafts. But if you wait till you have all the information, it's not good. It's like you have to make a move, and I think in Dynasty Fantasy Rookie before everyone else is sure. We run into the burning building.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you look at all of this news that starts coming up in the final like 48, 72 hours leading up to the draft. It is so hard to decipher what is just teams trying to get leverage on another team or trying to change the value of a player or something out there. So I think it's really tough because you want to absorb as much information as possible, but you also don't want to be overreactive to the
Yeah.
information. I mean, for the last 3 months, we've heard that the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to take Mason Graham. Like they brought him in for workouts. They were sharing these videos on social media and whatnot. It seemed like it was a done deal. And you're telling me that 48 hours before the draft, they just suddenly have a change of heart. Now they're saying, well, maybe it's Ashton Genty. Maybe it's Ted McMillan. Maybe it's
Right.
Armand Membu. Maybe it's, I think that what they're trying to do is just lure a team to get up there.
Right. And so don't you think the odds reflect the narrative because they they don't care what the actual outcome is, the sports
Yeah.
book. They care about getting action, the right action on the right side. They don't want everyone betting Ashton Genty at plus 700 when they can offer 250 now because it seems more like a sure thing. And Schefter, Dean Brugler, all these, the draft people are putting out like that it's almost like a done deal in a sense.
Yeah, and I mean that's something I feel like I've kind of saw behind the curtain a few years ago that when you see these lines swinging like crazy, it doesn't mean that the Circa sports book got a call from Trent Baalke saying that they're drafting Ashton Genty. What that means is that a bunch of people saw a story, they started betting on Ashton Genty, the line started to move, and then you get this FOMO from other bettors saying, "Well, I want to
Right.
get in before it hits -2. Like I'll still take it at -115," and all those swings are is just the sports books reacting to the money coming in. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I was just we're owned by a company, RotoWire, by gambling.com, and they just acquired Odds Jam. So I was just listening right before we started going live about how like the data comes in and it changes, it swings all over the place, and people are reacting and money's going on. So I think you nailed it. So let's apply this a little bit to our rookie draft because let's start. How many dynasty drafts are you going to be rookie drafts are you going to be in, or how many dynasty leagues are you in right now?
I don't know the exact number off the top
No,
of my
no.
head. I've had 2 rookie drafts go on already, and I think I've got somewhere between 12 and 15 that'll be kicking
Okay.
off next week.
All right, we're gonna put you in the low tier psychopath, right? Like, high tier
Yeah.
psychopath is 25 plus, and you're on another planet is 30 plus. I've been in the 30 plus. I'm back down to 13 now. You and I have talked about. I started hating fantasy football last year, having to set 40 lineups. So now I'm back to like enthusiastic. So all right, it's like a slot machine. Your phone goes off sleeper, MFL, Yahoo, ES, whatever you're playing, Dynasty starts going off. What do you think is the biggest mistake that even experienced Dynasty players make in the rookie drafts?
Drafting for need easily. I think that so many people out here, when you're looking at your lineup in April and you're thinking like, oh, I could really use a wide receiver 3 here. So I'm going to go ahead and draft Ted McMillan over Tyler Warren. And I think that's just silly process. Not that I'm saying that you shouldn't do that. I mean, we still have the NFL draft coming up tonight. And if Ted McMillan goes 5th overall to Jacksonville, sure, then you want to do it. But I think let's just hypothetically say that Tyler Warren goes 7 to the Jets, where he's kind of the favorite right now, and then Ted McMillan falls into the early 20s. Let's say he goes with Green Bay at 23 for whatever reason. There's no chance that I'm taking Ted McMillan ahead of Tyler Warren if that's what the draft capital tells us. But I think a lot of people sit there and they look at their draft and they draft for positional needs. And the reality is in April, you don't have any positional needs. Right now, you just want to accrue as much value as possible. Then you can use that additional value to address needs as you get closer to week 1.
Yeah, and I think this leads us into a conversation. You and I, we did a mock draft early on with our friend Theo Greminger, and we got into this discussion where like, why is Ashton Genty? Well, we know why Ashton Genty is the 101, even in these Superflex drafts, but why aren't we even considering Cam Ward? It sounds like that you and I both know that quarterbacks. I mean, so if you have 2 good quarterbacks, let's say you have something as good as like Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams. Right. So that's a pretty good 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
And your running backs are like Ken Walker and it goes down from there. You need a good running back, but would you still take Cam Ward, a quarterback in Superflex? Like, is the 101 rock solid at this point, or what's the case for Cam Ward, I should ask?
So I think what I do, you want to play with market a little bit. Like if I'm sitting at 101 and I could trade back to 102 or 103, still knowing that I'll probably get Cam Ward there and get, a second or third round pick on top of it, that's the optimal way to do this, but it doesn't always work out that way. A lot of people don't want to trade extra assets to move up. And especially if you've already signaled that you want to take Cam Ward and the guy sitting there at 102 wants Ginty, it's going to be really hard to pull that move off. But I think that's the best way to do it. But for me, so many people have started playing Dynasty with this mindset. Now, and I don't know your philosophy on this, but so many people play in this like 2-year window with Dynasty. And I strongly disagree with that stance. I think
so longer, Dave, you like to think about it longer or shorter?
I'm looking long term. I mean, when I play with people, I make this joke often, but like when I sign up for a Dynasty league, it is a blood oath for me. Like there's nothing that I'm doing to leave this league. I want to sign with managers who are interested in playing for the next 5, 10, 20 years. I'm not trying to play in this 2-year window knowing that the league is going to flame out. If I have the preconceived notion going into a league that it's going to flame out in 2 years, I'm just not joining that league. It's as simple as that. I want to be with managers who are playing for the long haul. So you start looking at quarterback and running back longevity, and obviously we know quarterbacks are going to be guys that are going to be in the league much longer than running backs. But I looked specifically at guys that were drafted number 1 overall, and I did this study last offseason, and last offseason came to the conclusion that number 1 overall pick since 1993, I was looking at the last 30 years of data, basically had an 80% chance of starting 5+ years in the league.
Say that again. Rewind that. I think that's important. I don't want anyone to gloss over that. Yeah, no. I want, because that's a number 101. That's a number 1 overall quarterback, not a first round quarterback. So say it again real quick.
Yeah, so I looked at every single quarterback that was drafted in round 1 since 1993, and I looked at how the draft picks correlated to success. And what I saw is that quarterbacks drafted number 1 overall have over an 80% chance of starting 5+ seasons. I did 80+ games. And now, there's some guys that haven't even hit that qualifier yet. So I was able to adjust this year looking. Kyler Murray finally got his 80+ starts, so we were able to make him another hit, which moves that number up. But then you look at Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow. Those guys haven't reached the ability to start 5+ seasons yet, but we could basically ink that in right now. So really what we're looking at is more like an 87 to 90% likelihood that Cam Ward is going to get 5+ seasons. And we remember the bust: Jamarcus Russell, Tim Couch, and that's pretty much it. Those are the only real 2 busts we've hit.
Right. And those are outliers, right? Like Russell, it wasn't anything to do with ability or, it was just, he just didn't have it when he got to the NFL. He was like, he got punched in the mouth a few times. Was David Carr 101?
He was, yeah, and he was
Okay.
the third guy. So what I did, it's tough to define NFL success, and I'll admit that I took some liberty and picking some arbitrary numbers here, but 5+ years as a starter is what I went with. 4,000 yards as a passer in a season, 30 plus
Mm,
touchdowns in a season, a Pro Bowl appearance, and a playoff win were kind of the
mm,
arbitrary metrics that I selected that I would deem to be a successful NFL quarterback. And guys that were drafted number one overall hit those marks at such a higher rate than anyone else. I mean, even guys, as soon as you get to number 2 overall, number 5 overall, number 10 overall, it just starts dropping off a cliff dramatically. And we remember the outliers. I think that's just human nature. Like you said, we remember
mm.
Jamarcus Russell and Tim Couch and David Carr. And we remember Patrick Mahomes and
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers and the guys that slipped in the draft. But the reality is, when you start looking at the full sample size, guys drafted number 1 overall are just such safe investments.
Right. Like I like that you identified all of the high end and the low end ones, because most likely when you're taking a 101, you're getting Jared Goff, right? I mean, like right in the middle,
Which isn't
perfectly
bad.
good. Yeah, perfectly good. 17 point per game fantasy guy. He's got to, if he has good receivers, he's going to get you 22 and you're very happy. I mean, Jared Goff, never overly expensive in drafts. You put him in, he's quote safe, even when he was traded, right? Everyone thought, you remember when he was traded from the LA to the Detroit? He
He
was
was dead at that
Yeah,
point. Nobody
dead.
wanted him. Yeah,
But he's alive. Why? Because he has 101 insulation.
exactly. And the comp that we came up with for Cam Ward, our rookie guide,
Mm.
is Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield is another guy
Mm.
who went 101. And I think a lot of people would think that Baker Mayfield was not a good pick at 101. But if you drafted Baker Mayfield in your rookie draft, in your dynasty draft, and held him all this time, you've got a guy right now who is a locked and loaded top 10 player at his position. And it didn't work out well in Cleveland, but he got a second opportunity. Well, he got a fourth opportunity really with Tampa Bay after stops in Carolina and Los Angeles. But that's just it. Like, these guys have pedigree that NFL teams are going to want to continue betting on. So, of course, you got the best case scenarios. Your Peyton Manning's out there. But
Mm-hmm.
even when you look at these middle of the road guys that we might think aren't that great, you still got QB1 seasons out of Jameis Winston. You got QB1 seasons out of Kyler Murray. All of these guys are starting 80 plus games. And that's it for me. If you're drafting a guy who's going to be a 5+ year starter, that is so valuable in Superflex leagues.
I intuitively do this, but I think you just explained, like, if I need to explain this, I'm just going to bring you on every time. Hey, listen to Dave with this. It's like, I knew 101 was a good thing, right? And it doesn't even apply to 102, right? 102, Zach Wilson, they'll move on from you. I mean, that definitely doesn't apply to the 10th pick. What was Josh Rosen a couple years? Was he 10, 8, something like that?
Yeah, and he was out of the league in 2 years.
I mean,
Right.
he wasn't a starter after one.
Mhm.
It's like, I mean, I get, yeah, that's very interesting. And obviously, I think at this point, we know it doesn't apply to anyone outside the top 15. If you're Kenny Pickett, if Shador Sanders gets drafted at pick 21, there's going to be less allegiance there. But you said something earlier I want to ask you about. I want you to explain it to us. Is you talked about draft capital. So draft capital versus opportunity. And I think this is something that a lot of rookie drafters, and when I say a lot, I'm just talking about myself here, I have a tough time deciphering. And like CeeDee Lamb going to the Cowboys a couple years ago was blocked. I'm putting that in air quotes for anyone listening on the audio, by Amari Cooper. But draft capital was there, talent was there. What do you think is the right balance, draft capital versus immediate opportunity? Now, I said you have to take a long-term view, so it might be easier for you to decipher this, but most people are just thinking about, I want to win now, Dave.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when I see guys that aren't going to have that immediate opportunity, those are guys that I'm still targeting in rookie drafts. And then knowing that they're probably going to have down rookie seasons, I'm targeting them after that rookie year. And the two guys that immediately come to mind are Jackson Smith-Njigba and Rome Odunze, two guys that got first-round draft capital, and we were excited about that. But Jackson Smith-Njigba goes to a team with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and he broke his wrist in the preseason. There was almost no chance that he was going to have a big rookie season, but still, his value dropped after his rookie year. Rome Odunze, we know DJ Moore and Keenan Allen were there. We know he's playing with a rookie quarterback. We know rookie quarterbacks can't support multiple options. Still, his value plummeted after his rookie season. So I'm okay drafting these guys as rookies, even if the opportunity isn't immediately there. And then I'll just double down after year one and try to get even more.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking Lamb, these guys are right in front of us. Odunze hasn't broken out yet. And JSN, all those guys are cleared out now. he's the guy, right? Like, he's a second round redraft pick. I mean, I'm sure I didn't even look at the consensus rankings, but he has to be in the top 10 of Dynasty, right? I'm just, I haven't pulled it up the consensus
I'd
a while.
assume. I did a redraft league that I mentioned that I was doing the other day.
Mhm.
I was picking second overall, so I came back in round 2 at the 211, and I took JSN there
Yeah.
without blinking. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just an easy pick late in round 2.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the consensus rankings across like this. I'm not a big keep trade cut guy, but I think it's a valuable tool in
That's a
the
good
sense where,
yeah.
like, yeah, like it should be part of the equation. I know people like it. JSN, yeah, the wide receiver 11. So, and they have the three guys they have ahead of them. I could see you could take JSN over. Marvin Harrison is over him, which depends. Nico, which is a monster, but he'll be 27 after this
Right.
season. And then Drake London, I mean, we'll see, right? After that, there's like an elite tier. So, wow, okay, right. So you're
And
saying,
real quick, I don't want to completely rewind, but I was trying to pull up a spreadsheet while I was talking about the quarterback discussion real quickly because I
yeah,
wanted to get you the exact numbers. Where I said, a guy drafted first overall is going to have almost a 90% chance of starting 5+ seasons.
mhm.
Looking at quarterbacks drafted 2 through 10.
So
So
this
we've
is
got
the 102 through the top 10, but not 101.
exactly right.
Okay.
And of course, like I said, we remember Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and those big names. But the reality is, those guys drafted from spots 2 to 10 have less than a 40% chance
Oh
of
my, so
logging 5
half,
seasons. Yeah.
less
So
less
a
than
guy
half.
drafted number 1 overall is basically twice as likely to be a long term starter.
Jesus, and that includes those like Deshaun Watson. Is he a hit? Is he? I mean,
Yeah, he got the 80+ starts, so
yeah.
he technically is considered a hit. And then, but
Well,
yeah,
there was.
we
Mhm.
remember the big names. But yeah, there's Josh Rosen and Mitch Trubisky and Marcus Mariota and Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, Mark Sanchez, all
Oh,
these guys that we had huge expectations for, drafted inside the top 10, that ended up doing nothing.
Christian Hackenberg. No, he was a
Yes,
what was it? He was
he might be in there, I think.
yeah, no, the road is so. I mean, when you take that's, and I agree with you. So 101 is a very special installation because usually there's like a massive trade up for that guy,
Mhm.
or he is just like the teams are drafting for floor there, right? Like they don't, if you
Right.
get the 101, you don't want to screw that pick up, right? Like you just want like, hey, what can not get us fired, right?
Mhm.
Trevor Lawrence, I mean, when he gets there, I mean, at this point, I still think he's a hit in a sense where, fine, he's like not reached expectation, but he hasn't been like a Jamarcus Russell bust.
Right, and he doesn't have his 80 starts yet, so
Right, that's what
he'll
I'm saying. Like,
probably get there. But 4,000-yard season,
yeah.
playoff win, Pro Bowl. I mean, like I said, these were these kind of arbitrary metrics I came up with. But
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence is on pace to hit 4 or 5 of those. He has a 30 touchdown season, and then he hits in the same bucket as all of the other guys.
The one I wanted to ask you, why do you include a playoff win in there? Because the reason I ask is fantasy, we don't care about that, but is it because a playoff win ensures more starts in the future?
That's exactly it. Yeah, I think that again, it's really tough to come up with terms for success, but I thought that a playoff win, if
Mm,
you're able to come in as a quarterback and win a playoff game, I
right.
think that's a good signal of success, even if it doesn't matter in fantasy.
And a good example is it got Daniel Jones paid, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Right. Wow. So yeah, I guess is Daniel Jones considered a success even though it's been disastrous the last couple of years, or is he a non-success? Because think about where you had to draft him in your even Superflex. He was going like 204 the year he
Mhm.
came out.
Yeah, he would not be considered a success. Of the 5 metrics that I came up with, the
Yeah.
only one he clears is a playoff win.
All right. Not good. Not good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Although, I mean, just I don't want to sidetrack too much, but are you an Anthony Richardson guy, or are you going to put your chip on Daniel Jones for fantasy only? I'm talking about.
I've got Daniel Jones ahead of Anthony Richardson in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
rankings right now.
I
Yeah,
like that.
not crazy about it, but Richardson, man, it's been tough. I mean, we've seen
Hmm.
little flashes here and there, but the inconsistent, not like Daniel Jones is
Hmm.
speaking of consistency and good quarterback play by any means, but I think Steichen is going to be hoping to save his job,
Yeah.
and trotting out Anthony Richardson for another full year probably isn't going to do that. I think that I don't know who's going to start week 1, but I'd bet on Daniel Jones starting
Yeah.
Mike Williams and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Dave, I didn't think we would agree on a lot of stuff, but I'm learning as I get to know you more and more. You definitely were aligned in some of these things. We see it the same way, but scary but true. We're talking about like different ways to win your rookie draft, some new strategies. Some of you may know some of these strategies, but how do you balance the talent of a player versus the situation that they're in, right? Um,
So Yeah.
I was going to use the example of like Pittsburgh. Sometimes it was a place to go and not have high fantasy production for receivers with pick. And DK Metcalf is there. We don't know who the quarterback is. So those are examples, but situation versus talent in our rookie drafts, Dave.
So in Dynasty, I am 100% betting on talent, and I'll
Okay.
make little moves inside of tiers. If I have two guys that I consider similar talent level, one gets a much better landing spot than the other, I might make that adjustment. But I'm just a big believer that cream rises to the top. And
Mm.
how many times have we seen really, really talented players land in a less than ideal situation, and then we fade the player for that reason, and then they end up breaking out anyway because they're a good player, and that's what
Who-
good players do. And similarly, how many times have we seen subpar talents drafted into ideal situations, get hoisted up in rookie drafts, and then faceplant miserably? Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the biggest example that comes to mind, but it happens every single year.
Yeah, no. I was about to ask you an example, but CEH was like running back 5 across the board, gets
Uh-huh.
drafted by the Chiefs in round 1 and gets vaulted ahead of Jonathan Taylor, right? Like,
Unreal.
I mean, in redraft, he went 101. You know how like the FFPC and NFFC
Oh, I
have their
remember.
drafts after after Thursday,
Yeah.
meaning like CEH had a good performance, goes 101. I mean, that was a whole thing. Now, I mean, CH, he's droppable in some formats,
Right.
depending on, very, very, very interesting there.
So I think you just bet on the talent rather
Yeah.
than the situation, because situations change. Like Roma Dunze, we talked about him a little bit earlier, drafted in a less than ideal situation.
Mm.
We didn't like the head coach, we didn't like the offensive coordinator, we knew it was a rookie quarterback, we knew he was third in pecking order, and then in a blink of an eye, Ben Johnson's in Chicago. Caleb Williams is going into year 2. Keenan Allen's out of the picture. All of a sudden, now it's wheels up for Roma Dunze, which really, had you just realized he was a talented player, you wouldn't have had any of these concerns going into year 2.
All right, couple housekeeping things here, Dave. I'm here with Dave Kluge from Football Guys, and this is the RotoWire Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Circa Swim. Have you been out to the Circa Hotel in Las Vegas at all, Dave? Ever?
I haven't, no, but
Right. You've
I
heard
think
about
we
it.
might be going in January. Yeah, it
Oh,
looks awesome.
yes. So RotoWire, for many, like the last 4 or 5 years, has done our annual trip there. We're not going to be going out to Vegas this year, but Circa Swim, you could do like a draft experience there. So they sponsor the podcast still. It's pretty cool. You can, if you do the experience, you just go to Circa Swim or Google it or go to Circa's website, circasports.com. And they'll pick you up in a limo. If you're going to do your draft there, they'll give you a cabana. They bring out the draft board, whatever food, bottle service. It's a really cool experience. Go out there with your league mates. I mean, the art of the live draft is kind of, dwindling, but if you're going to do it, I mean, doing it in Vegas at Circa Swim, at Circa Sports in Stadium Swim is really the way to do it. Also, just a couple other notes, Dave. I just want to let everyone know that RotoWire, during the draft, which is Thursday through Saturday, our premium content behind our paywall, we're going to give you 50% off any RotoWire product. YouTube 50 at checkout, 50% off. And then, that's, are you guys doing anything over at Football Guys for the draft? Are you doing live streaming? What do you happen to be doing this time?
Yeah, so tonight, Thursday night, Sigmund Bloom and Matt Waldman are going to be doing their live stream, and I'll be joining on that. Ooh, I should know this time off the top of my head. 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be hopping on that for a half hour. But then tomorrow, Alfredo Brown, my co-host over on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show, and then Jeff Bell, my co-host on the Football Guys Dynasty Show, and Mike Kashuba, the three of them and me, we're going to be hosting a live stream, and we're going to have 16 guests roll throughout day 2. It's just going to be a nonstop slew of guys coming. Bob Harris, Matt Waldman, a bunch of other people. So it'll be fun. And we did that plug on our YouTube channel, and not to dog on, the major networks, but there was a comment that said, I've been watching the draft on the major networks for the last few years, and it just seems like all of these guys are mouthpieces for agents and whatnot, and it's just a big PR spin. They're like, I'm going to check out the live draft this year because you guys seem to be a little bit more grounded and objective. So I think a lot of people are going to start making that switch.
So, you're preaching to the converted here, right? Like,
right.
You and I have been watching live streams on drafts, like across the industry, all of our friendly competitors, right? Like Football Guys is a great one. Player Profiler, Ray at Destination Debbie does a phenomenal. There's so many more, right? Those are so much more informative. RotoWire does one with Jim Coventry. Then I can't say it any better. And again, it's like, I understand you're making broadcast television. Bob in accounting has to watch it. They don't know all the storylines, but if you're a serious football fan or certainly a fantasy player, you're going to want to watch a fantasy stream. The quality, the production on all these streams has gotten so great. This year we have some guys. We have a Joe Bartle. He's got boots on the ground who's going to be doing video. He has access to some players sending us back videos, and we're going to be posting them with our player notes in our X and Blue Sky feeds and all that kind of stuff. So every year it evolves more, and streaming is becoming like a better, just a more entertaining product than the professional television networks.
Yeah, we promise not to bore you with any of the sob stories about these kids' childhoods and family members that died terrible deaths. We're not going to be talking about that on the live streams, I promise.
So here's the only reason why I do like those. It gets my wife to watch, and because she loves those things. And again, she loves football. She plays fantasy, but she likes the human interest story. So what we do is we have the two. I have the computer on my lap. I have but we have the two TVs. So she's watching human interest. I'm watching the draft, yelling and screaming. And by the way, how do the streamers get the picks before the TV? How does that happen? I never understood.
Albert Breer. If you turn notifications on for Albert Breer, he's got every pick 30 seconds before it comes out. We do our best not to spoil the picks.
You got to spoil.
But last year we were together in person. Like we were all sitting at this conference table doing our live stream, and we all had our phones on the table. And you'd see us like trying so hard not to explode when we'd see that notification and try to save it so we were synced up with the live broadcast.
Yeah, no, we're spoilers where we can be. It's like we always tell you, like, don't if you want to wait for the pick, go. We're spoiling because it's just fun. I mean, I can't keep a secret like that. I can do it. Kluge, we're talking rookie draft strategy. All right, so trading. Right, we always talk like trade back. Like, all right, like how do you trade back? Like, I'm under the impression if I ever really want to get a trade done. Like I always feel like I have to overpay a little bit. That might just be my insecurity about what the other guy's needs and wants. So is there, because at this point, everybody knows the tier break, but there's no tier break this time. Where do you think the trade back point is? Where is the tier going to be flat? And obviously once we have our landing spots, that'll become more clear. But as you're seeing rookie draft boards as a general, where do you think the trade back spots are in this year?
That's, Jeff Bell and I, we do the Dynasty show over at Football Guys, and we just had a long discussion about this. We did a show on tiers and where to trade back, and we did all of this. And then after we, got the whole audience to watch this 45-minute production we put on talking about tiers, in the final 5 minutes, we said, but we're probably going to be totally wrong about this. You look back at the tiers from previous drafts, and we think that we have it locked in, that we know, this, you want to get inside the top 6, and then you want to pick 7 through 12. And the reality is we are so overconfident about tiers at this point that I don't really think that trying to chase tiers is the best thing to do. I mean, I think that the top 2 is a pretty safe tier. I'd even go top 3 if you want to lump Travis Hunter in there. I think Ashton Jinty, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, if you can get inside that top 3, great. If you don't have to overpay, even better. But I think if you're trying to trade up from 9 to 8 and you have to give up significant value to get there, you're probably a little overconfident in your process. And I think you should realize that, maybe it's best to just sit there at 9 and wait.
Right. Well, unless last year you were doing 9 to 8 to go get Brian Thomas, then it's not so bad, right? But that's hindsight is very easy. I'm very good with the. You ever look back at old rookie drafts?
How many people traded from 2 to 3 to get Marvin Harrison, and that didn't work out quite as well. So it goes both ways.
Dude, I thought I was being so clever last year. I did stupid stuff like that. But I have made so many bad trades. And at the time, I really believed I was outsmarting the other guy. Of course, we'll have our war stories. Off the top of head, if you can't think of anyone, we'll pass. But what's one of the worst dynasty trades you've ever made?
I've made some bad ones. It wasn't a trade. It wasn't a trade, but we do talk about, pre-draft rookie drafts. Mm-hmm. And I think the worst move I ever made was doing a draft in March a few years ago, having the 101, turning down all of these offers for it because I was dead set on taking Malik Willis 101. Mm. So that was probably the worst thing I did, was not take a trade back from 101 that year.
Yeah, and I pushed people out of the way to take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud because of that our 101 conversation. And after year 1, I was like, I wanted to throw up. But now, we're back. We're back a little bit.
I don't think the gap is too far between those two guys right now. Yeah.
Bryce Young's going to be an interesting 101 conversation because of how down he was and then how back he is. So I guess that really leads me into to a discussion we were talking about it with Superflex specifically, and how to strategically target these non-101 quarterbacks. Okay, so Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Milroe, these guys are going to be all over rookie drafts ADP. So Does your quarterback philosophy like need to take the best players, the highest upside guys? Does that apply to these guys who are just maybe not even have clear paths to start? How are you going to play these guys given they have, non-top 10 draft capital?
I mean, it's so crazy right now because we don't know what to expect. Like, if we come out of tonight with 3 quarterbacks going in the top 10, like if Shador Sanders and Jalen Milroe go inside the top 10 alongside Cam Ward, it wouldn't shock me that much. If Cam Ward is the only guy drafted in round 1, it wouldn't shock me that much. If we see Tyler Shugg as the QB2 off the board, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, this is, I've never seen less of a consensus around a quarterback class. Like, we know Cam Ward is up there. But man, I really am just going to have to defer to draft capital on a lot of these. Now, assuming we see, I think what I've seen in a lot of mock drafts is that 3 of these guys kind of fall to the end of round 1, where we see Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Shador Sanders all kind of going in the 20s, early 30s. If that happens, where we're looking at similar draft capital for these guys, Jalen Milroe is the one that I want. Absolutely. I mean, he fits the archetype
Nuclear
for these
option.
quarterbacks. Exactly. Yeah. He just breaks fantasy football if everything goes in the right direction for him. I mean, he's got the Lamar Jackson speed and the Jalen Hurts big arm and Josh Allen's tackle breaking ability. I mean, he is like a Frankenstein where you take like the best trait of every single quarterback and put it together. Unfortunately, he just has the same issue Cam Newton has, which is that he has one way to throw the ball. That's at 100 miles an hour. He doesn't have any touch in the short to intermediate game. So I think that he's got the brains, he's got the leadership, he's got the athletic upside. If he could just learn to develop that touch a little bit in the short areas of the game, I think he's the guy that could immediately just become a tier 1 dynasty quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious comparison is Jalen Hurts, right? Like,
Right.
If Milroe goes in round 2 behind an entrenched veteran, like if he goes behind Geno Smith, I mean, we're going to push him up into the first round. I mean, because we've already seen Pete Carroll push Matt Flynn. Remember when he signed Matt Flynn and then elevate Russell Wilson? So if they take a second round quarterback, there's an opportunity. You said rankings in tiers earlier, and I forgot to ask you this. If you identify a tier in the first round, but it's a 1 spot move up, what should people in rookie drafts expect to pay just to move up 1 spot, but with an obvious tier break?
I think it depends. I mean, I think the trade up from 4 to 3 is going to be a big one. The gap between those 3 that we talked about and
Ward,
whoever is at
Genty,
4.
and Hunter.
Right. And then whoever's next,
Hampton.
tight end premium. Yeah. Tight end premium. It might be Tyler Warren if he goes 7th overall to the Jets. Maybe it's Omarion Hampton if he lands with Denver. But I think that's a perfect example of why you don't want to overpay, because right now we're looking at that tier of 3. Well, what happens if Genty does slip a little bit more than we expect? I'm not saying anything crazy here, but like, what if he goes 9th to the Saints, which is, possible. And then he's sitting behind Alvin Kamara for a year. And let's say Omarion Hampton goes 20 to the Broncos, where he's got a clear path to 350 touches this year. And you traded a bunch away to move up from Hampton to Genty. I don't know if it's worth it in that scenario. So we think we know these tiers right now, but things are going to change after tonight.
Yeah, for a while we had the Breece Hall, Ashton Genty backfield combo. Again, I'm not writing that off. You keep mentioning Tyler Warren. Do you think that, in consensus rankings, he's tight end 4? Do you have him as like your clear number 1? And is he like an instant plug and play? Because I've drafted OJ Howard. I was that idiot. I drafted Ebron. Like I've gone for these guys. I won't stop. Yeah. But Dalton Kincaid hasn't worked out. So am I going to stick my finger in the proverbial electrical socket again here, Dave, with Warren?
I think if he goes top 10, that's a lot different than some of the other guys that you've mentioned. That's a huge investment for a tight end, and that puts him in Brock Bowers and even Kyle Pitts, who, like, people act like Kyle Pitts is terrible. I mean, you still look at what he's done through his first handful of years, and
it's below expectation. That's all it is.
Below expectation. Yeah. But I mean, he's still, like, you start looking at what guys have done through their first 4 seasons, and he's up there with Rob Gronkowski and Tony Gonzalez and Mike Ditka and all the names that you'd expect him to be there. But, expectations were so high that it's going to be tough for him to live up to that. If Tyler Warren gets that top 10 draft capital, he immediately becomes a top 5 dynasty tight end for me. But Colston Loveland is another guy who I expect to go in round 1. I was on, I don't want to steal somebody else's take, but I was on with Scott Barrett earlier this week, and we were kind of talking about the tight ends in this class. And he so eloquently said that Tyler Warren's basically the wide receiver 3 in this class. You got Travis Hunter, Ted McMillan, and then it's basically Tyler Warren. And if he gets that draft capital inside the top 10, all the other receivers are going at that 1-2 turn. It's going to be really hard to take Igbuka or Burden or
Right.
Golden or any of these guys going in the 20s over a tight end that's got top 10 capital.
Right. It's like change their position to PC pass catcher, right? Like, and I
Right.
think that's a strategy for a lot of these teams. Like, they see what wide receivers cost. If you don't love the wide receivers, take the elite pass catching tight end, and then, their market. I mean, what did McBride? He's like the highest ever, 19 per year.
Yeah.
I mean, compare that to Jamar Chase, right? Was it 40 per year? Something like, whatever it is. But since we're talking about wide receivers, pass catchers, playmakers, so are we in line here that we're treating Travis Hunter like a wide receiver? Doesn't matter how they announce him. Doesn't matter how they deploy him in the first month of the season. I've identified him, and I don't think this is anything groundbreaking here, as the only player in this draft that can knock down the door of that the elite Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase tier this time next year.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to say it because he's not my wide receiver two in the class, but I think Burden has that upside
Okay.
too. I
To
think there's a
that
lot of
tier, to go
questions.
up to where I just said?
I do. Yeah. You look at what he does
Ooh,
after
maybe.
the catch, he's that guy that can score from anywhere on the field. He's got elite athleticism up there with the Jamar Chase. So the floor for Burden is obviously very low, wide range
Mm.
of outcomes. But I think that if he hits his ceiling outcome, he could sneak into that tier as well. But I think Hunter is the most likely to do it for sure. And I'm with you that, it's funny how quickly we changed, just like 6 weeks ago. Travis Hunter was going in the middle of round 2 in rookie drafts. And then
Our
as soon,
draft. Remember the draft we did
exactly.
together? I got him at
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
203. It was-
Yeah, and that's where he was going, and now he's kind of locked in as his top 3 pick. But I think especially if you look at the Browns, what they did with bringing Joe Flacco in, we saw a little taste of what Joe Flacco and Kevin Stefanski could look like together,
Yep.
and that turned Amari Cooper into a 50-point per game scorer, and David Njoku was the overall tight end one. They're going to be throwing the ball 50 plus times a game with Joe Flacco. There's not going to be any threat of him running the ball. He is going to be a drop back and a 5-step drop and hit his receiver. And right now, the only guy that would really limit Travis Hunter would be Jerry Jeudy, who I'm
Yeah.
not too crazy about. David Njoku, a tight end. I mean, Travis Hunter, if he's playing full-time wide receiver in this Browns offense, they're going to be throwing the ball a ton. He's going to be carving out a 30 to 35% target share for himself. He could easily be in that elite tier of dynasty receivers by next year.
I think having like you just pointed out, Judy and Joko as like obstacles, I think those are the exact type of guys you want to have as your second
Right.
and third, right? Someone
Yeah.
that's not going to push you out of the way there. So that's ideal. I love the way you weave in and out of these things, Dave. What's your favorite type of podcasting to do? Do you like talking dynasty more, redraft, or just the mood is the mood? Like what you talk about this stuff so passionately. You got me excited about it.
This time of year, I definitely like talking dynasty,
Yeah.
and I'll be talking dynasty for the next month or so. What I do after the NFL draft is I go through every single week. I do a deep dive on each position. So the week after the NFL draft, I'll be doing quarterbacks, then running backs, then wide receivers, and then tight ends. And I kind of go through and tier and rank all of these guys once we get the landing spots. Then once that month is over, then that's when I turn the page to redraft. But man,
What's your least favorite then? Like, what's the part? Is there a part like in season by week 6? You're like, oh, I got to do the waiver wire. What's the part that you do, but you're not? It's more of utility for your audience who's been loyal to you for years.
waivers are soul crushing. Dude, by week 12, having to do waivers, it's like you end up talking about so many of the same guys too, because there's these guys that we like that just don't get picked up. So it's like, well, we've talked about this guy for the last 8 weeks. Well, he's still only rostered in 30% of leagues. So go out and get Devon Vele or whoever it's going to be this year. So waivers, it's got to be done.
So how do we make it more exciting? How can we make it more exciting for an audience, for people that are like, just hanging on with their teams? I mean, who knows, right? It's just information at that point, right?
I think that's the age-old question, is how to make content more exciting. And what Alfredo Brown and I do, I think we have some fun with it. We kind of do a waiver draft where he picks his top guy and then I pick my top guy, and we kind of go back and forth. We have our threshold, 40% or lower ownership. And that's a fun way to do it, but it's still every Monday. I mean, the in-season grind, I don't want to make it to sound like I'm not incredibly blessed and happy to be doing this job.
Caveat. We get it. Yeah. I'm talking real stuff with you here, Dave.
The in-season grind, though, it's fun.
Yeah.
But by about week 12, that's when it's like Groundhog's Day, doing it over and over.
Yeah.
I like this point in the offseason. We can be creative. We can talk about so much more. We can have these high-level discussions about things that aren't the guy you need to pick up.
My favorite is the type of stuff to broadcast and do podcasts like this is when there's no football going on, right? Like the off
Mhm.
season. When the season comes on, I pass the mic over to some of the other guys, let them podcast. I do more support work and, a few things here and there, appearances. But I agree. I love all the strategizing, the theorizing, player take, sure, here and there. But now it's interesting to hear that other people feel a similar way. The way that we used to do waivers when I was working over at Roster Watch was I said like do the $0 bid waiver wire show, right? Only guys that
Yep.
you're going to put a zero. I mean, that was the spin to try to make it, who's going to
That's
be
fun.
on next week's waiver wire top list. So that was, it's similar to what you're talking about there.
So yes, my favorite type of show though.
Yeah.
I'm actually I haven't broadcasted it a ton publicly yet, but right after the draft, I'm going to be bringing back a show that kind of put me on the map that I started back in 2020. It was called The Launchpad, and at the time, it was just be me hosting the show, and I'd have guests come on, and I would just kind of give the floor to the guest, and I loved it because I one didn't have to do a lot of work, but two, I was able to just kind of be a sponge and just like learn
Yeah.
from these people. So that's starting up just this week. The next episode will be out on Friday. Sigmund Bloom is going to be my first guest. It's going to be a very on the couch type of feel. So kind of a little hat tip to Sig there. Hey, thanks for letting me do this on the Football Guys channels. But we'll be alternating every week between Football Guys staff and then an outside guest as well. So that'll be a fun way for me to just kind of learn. And Alan, be prepared. I'll probably be reaching out to you in the next month or so to get you booked on that one.
I love talking to you. So, it's just, and that's why, like it's very similar to this format here. And the reason I started a podcast, Dave, was because I was like a podcast consumer. I still am. Like I listen to everything. And I didn't think that all of the questions that I want answered as a fantasy football player were being asked. So that's what I do here. I bring on guys like yourself who are really like, you were talking about that spreadsheet with 101s, like that's amazing. Like, now I'll be able to go on a show and say, oh, I just talked to Dave Kluge today and he was giving me 87%, like I can cite you and say, hey, this is what I learned today. And that's not stealing your material. I'm saying, hey, Dave taught me this on our podcast today. So, and then you're letting out the dirty little secret is it's a lot less work but it's a skill. Hosting's a skill, I think. So
I'll also say citing people that you learn something from.
Yeah.
I don't know why people have this like, they don't want to do it. They want to make it sound like if you're citing somebody, one, it shows that you're out there consuming somebody else's content. And two, it shows that you respect somebody enough to cite them. We talk about this at Football Guys all the time. We try to cite at least one content creator in everything that we produce, just because it's giving back a little bit, showing that we're a part of the community, and people like when they're called out for doing something smart.
Totally. I didn't understand the norms of that sometimes. Like I would hear something on a podcast, I would say it, and then someone would say to me, like, this doesn't happen all the time. Hey, that was my thing. I was like, yeah, it was. Like I heard it on your podcast. I said, like, and then I realized it's like footnoting in journalism, yeah. So that's cool. No, it's fantasy football information. I understand people put a lot of work into their stuff. You want credit, and I totally get that as well. So yeah. Probably, audience of 6 like that conversation, but I enjoyed it, Dave. I mean, the content creators. But getting back to just a couple more things for our rookie draft strategy. After the first, round and a half, first 2 rounds, now we get into the 3rd and 4th round. I challenged people the other day, like, how many good players come out of here? The answer is a good amount, but it's hit rate stuff. I mean, we can go to Bucky Irving, go to Tyrone Tracy. Of course, Puka Nacua is the holy grail of 5th round drafts, right? But I mean, how do you play these picks? The 305, because most of the time you end up with Malachi quarterly type. So, what's the strategy for these 3rd and 4th round picks?
Running backs. I mean, just as simple as that.
Why? Tell me why.
Yeah, because they have the opportunity to break out. And I don't like investing premium draft capital in dynasty drafts in running backs because they have short shelf lives. If they get hurt, their value plummets from underneath them. I'm looking at these late picks, my 3rd, 4th, 5th rounders as lottery tickets. And, you do remember the Puka Nacua, of course. And Tank Dell, I think, is another win. And Amon St. Brown, these guys do pop up every once in a while. But what I like to do is draft these these running backs who go on day 3. And then as soon as they pop in value, you trade them for an even better pick. So I'll take that 3rd round pick that I spent on Chase Brown a couple of seasons ago. Now you're telling me that I could flip Chase Brown for the 106 and get a safe asset that I'm going to be able to hold for the next half a decade. I'd much prefer to do that. So when I'm sitting there, I try to look at running backs who maybe only have 1 or 2 obstacles ahead of them. And we saw that last year with Bucky Irving. I mean, Rashad White, Sure, the production was there. He was a top 5 fantasy running back. But once you start looking at the actual metrics, he was 118th in EPA in 2023.
Yeah.
Like, there's no running back that is going to be that much of a liability in the run game and able to hold down a job. So you see a guy like Bucky Irving knowing that the only obstacle he has to become a full-time starter is to jump ahead of one of the worst running backs in the league. That's such an easy pick to make. And I'll be doing the same now. When we look at this draft, there's a lot of teams that have open depth charts. So I think a lot of people would love to see Omari and Hampton in Dallas, for instance. But if they don't draft Omari and Hampton and they wait until day 3 and they draft Rashad Smith, I'm going to draft a ton of Rashad Smith because all he's got to do is get ahead of Javonte Williams, which we've seen guys do time and time again. So those day 3 running backs can spike in value so quickly. You're not getting that sort of value pop from almost any other position.
And let's remind each other here, Bucky Irving, you kind of got mocked if you took him too early. If you took him in the 4th round, fine. But like if you would have taken Bucky at 210, that would not have been that would have been, you're getting crushed in the chat. And what's interesting is Bucky had like this absurd amount of pass catches from a running back. Is there anyone floating around there right now that you don't think is getting the respect? Again, this is like sleeper. I guess this is a true sleeper pick, but he's no matter what, he's going to be going in like the late 3rd, early 4th of our rookie drafts, but he's the guy that could shove a Javonte type out of the way. And I know you mentioned Rashard Smith, but anyone else there that I just want to keep an eye on in the running backs, because the receivers, I don't want to do it again.
That was a random name that I just pulled out of my head, but I think LaQuint Allen, especially if you're looking for somebody who has the pass catching chops. I mean, he was just a pass catching machine at Syracuse last year. And I get a little bit concerned with his running style because he's very small. Well, not small. He's tall, but he's thin. He doesn't look like a running back. He looks like a Derrick Henry on Ozempic. Like he's just like a thinner version with that upright running style. But I think that he can beef up a little bit. He's still just 20 years old. I don't know about you, Alan. I'm definitely not the same weight now that I was at 20 years old. It seems like the early 20s are when you can pack some pounds on pretty easily here.
Do you remember eating like chicken parm for lunch every day? Like that's what that was my lunch at 23. I would have like a giant chicken parm sandwich. And now might as well just tape it to my gut,
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of Pequod's Pizza in Chicago. It's become really popular recently. Deep dish, yeah. And it's right down the street from where I used to live. They used to have a special where you would get a 9-inch deep dish pizza and a 20-ounce beer for $5. I lived on that in my early 20s, just eating deep dish pizza and beer for like 5 years straight. And I had a 6-pack during all of it. Yeah. Things change as you get a little bit older.
Right.
You go, Allen, pass catching machine. He's a fun guy.
All right. So, and I don't care where he goes. He's not going before 403 in your draft. Maybe 401, maybe makes up the 310. Yes, that is and by the way, when we talk about the running backs over the receivers, the reason I say that is because I'm never going to have Thor Nystrom on my podcast again. And I'm saying this in a joking way because I had him on here right before rookie draft and he was giving me the whole Luke McCaffrey, why he's great. So I get off the podcast. I'm hyped. I'm on the clock. It's like the 404. I don't have a pick. Luke's sitting there, and I give my 3rd this year to go draft Luke McCaffrey at the 404. And I don't know. Maybe there's still some upside there, but man, I could almost. I'm not going to drop him because I gave my 3rd this year. But with a running back, at least there's the theoretical Khalil Herbert. As soon as he gets a chance, you could at least start him. Luke McCaffrey, I can never start. Unless because if he has a good game, 6 for 80 and a touchdown week 1, I'm going to put him in. What's going to happen in week 2.
Exactly. And what I want to say with these, like, I think the real important thing is not just drafting these guys in your 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks, but just as important of drafting them is flipping them when they do hit. Because as much as
that's hard though, Dave. Come on.
It is hard, but the reality is, and I know it's hard because I've talked to a lot of people about this, guys who aren't content creators like us, guys who aren't, guys who are more casual players. And they are just so willing to buy right now. The Tyrone Tracy's and the Chase Browns and these guys who can get totally.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. I don't mean hard where there's no market. I mean hard is because as soon as they do something good, you don't want to sell.
I know. Yeah. And I mean, sometimes you get egg on your face. I sold all of my Kyron Williams shares after his big breakout and then came out and did it again next year. But I still think it's a good process because for every Kyron Williams, there are 50 Dameon Pierces.
Right. Oh, that's, Pierce is the right example. So let's just use this rookie draft strategy tip here. So if there is a 5th round, 4th, where did Pierce go in the 4th or 5th in the real NFL draft?
I think he was a 5th rounder.
5th round. But that person, there's really no starter job. Let's say Pittsburgh takes a 5th round running back that we all like, a Damian Martinez type. I mean, Martinez won't go in the first round, but he'll go 203, 202 in a lot of drafts. Is that just disaster waiting to happen?
Yeah, I don't think I'd pay up that high for any day 3 running back.
Right.
I'm typically reserving my day 3 running back picks in third, fourth, and fifth round. Round 2 is when I still do like to look at some of the premium positions. Like if, for instance, Damian Martinez goes day 3 to Dallas, ideal landing spot. We love that, of course, but I'd still probably prefer Jalen Milroe with round 2 draft capital. Jalen Knoll with round 2 draft capital. There's a lot of other guys that I could see theoretically being better picks than Damian Martinez. And then I'll wait for, the Taj Brooks that I can get in round 5 that went in day 3 and has an opportunity. Just the guys that you'd least expect are usually the guys that end up popping.
Dave Kluge, you did it, baby. You did it. We enjoyed having you here. We'll have you back a bunch of times again, but I love talking Dynasty. I love talking strategy with you because, again, player takes are fun. I was curious in a bunch of your player takes, but it's like getting into people that actually play in Dynasty leagues. Like that's what I wanted to broadcast this for, because you're about to get the slot machine's about to go off. You're going to want to trade up. You're going to want all these rookies when you see them drafted. And man, you just got to show a little bit restraint, see what falls to you. And I think this conversation did it for me. You are what I consider the sober voice sometimes in Dynasty fan. Is that
3 years sober, actually? Yeah.
Well, there you go. So figuratively and literally. How the hell did you do that? How'd you stop? You don't drink any alcohol anymore, right?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Big drinker for a long time. And then one day I had a few too many suds and fell in the shower and serious concussion. And I said, you know what? I need to stop doing this. I was out doing some yard work, throwing some beers back, and next thing I know, I wake up in the ER and I said, this is not how I want to live my life anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because my wife did it like she just went cold turkey just for no reason other than it's like, I'm not sleeping well at night. And so when she cuts back, I've cut back. And when she stopped, I cut back because she's side-eyeing me every time I'm making a martini. But I think I need to get there because on those days, which is, 6 of the days out of the week when I'm not, I just feel so like creative and energetic and, and those other days, man, that other day, I should say, it's just like, couch, eating crappy food and just,
It's that first like 3 months is really, really tough. And then I think the other big hurdle is when you go to like your first like big event, you go to a wedding or something like that, and that's tough.
Pressure.
Exactly. But the easiest way to get over it, what I've realized, I just get seltzer water with a lime in there. Nobody knows any better. I mean, my drink for years was vodka seltzer. So now I just, the seltzer water without the vodka, and most people don't even realize.
So I'm just going to take a guess then. You didn't think that you would be doing a real Sigmund Freud session here on the guy. So what's your adrenaline push then? What's the thing that gives you that adrenaline? Is there like an activity? Because we all need that adrenaline spike from time to time.
Yeah, I go to the gym every single morning, and then on top of that, my big thing, my real addiction, if you will, is moving out here to Colorado. Started getting into the recreational activities out here, not the recreational you're thinking of. I'm talking, mountain climbing and whitewater rafting and skiing and all that sort of stuff. So things that I, had done previously, but really fully invested in that lifestyle these days.
Yeah, no, you did it the right way. We've talked about this offline that's the right move. I told you, my wife and I moved from New York City grind to chill, northern Florida and Jacksonville. It's just a different lifestyle there. How long have you been over with Football Guys now?
Started here in 2020, so this will be my 5th season with Football Guys, and
full time, right? Since then.
I've been full time since 2022. So everyone sees the forward facing stuff, the podcast and the writing and all that, but do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, managing our partnerships with other brands and advertising and things of that nature. So for anyone looking to make it in the industry, I'd say to try to find some secondary skills outside of just content creation where you can really make yourself valuable to a company. Yeah,
like unless you're like Matthew Berry does content only, but there was a long way to go all the way through that. You have to be like what I say is like on a submarine, the cook knows how to fire the missiles. You know what I'm saying? Like, like you need to know every job because if things go wrong in a submarine, you need to know the jobs. It's the same thing with like working in sports and, in mid-sized fantasy companies like we do. When I say mid-size, I mean like, there's ESPN or the big size ones, Yahoo. So Football Guys, RotoWire, still emerging companies. You need to know how to do everything. I think that's a good point. All right, Dave, what's your X handle right now? Is it just your name?
Dave Kluge. Yeah, real simple. I bought it a few years ago because I was sick of the Dave Kluge _FF. I was able to get in touch with the guy who and it was a very not safe for work account for a while. Whoever had that Dave Kluge account was posting some weird stuff.
He had really. So how did you? What was the final price? What did you have to pay him?
$20. Not much at all. Yeah, he
$20
when I offered him $20. I said, "Hey, are you interested in selling this account?" And he said, "Here's my Venmo. Can you send me $20?" I was expecting to pay a lot more than that, so I was more than happy to get it for $20.
What would you have paid? 500?
I probably would have got him about $250 if I needed to. Hopefully that guy I sold it to isn't listening to the show right now.
You would have. I'm telling you would have gone more than 250. You wanted it. I could tell you wanted it. You would have. You've gone 400.
I'd have pushed it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you have your name on all the other social media platforms?
No. There was a guy who wrote a book about the U.S. Constitution back in the late 90s when I was still a young child, and he got most of those other ones. So a lot of the Dave Kluge stuff you'll see is going to be a book about the U.S. Constitution. There's another musician out there with the same name, but I got it where it matters most on Twitter.
Yeah, that's the good thing about being Alan Seslowsky. There's not a lot of us in the world. Yep. All right, everybody. We'll be back next week with another Dynasty